भारत के संसद भवन के निर्माण का शुभारंभ हमारी लोकतांत्रिक परंपराओं के सबसे अहम पड़ाव में से एक है।
Is the health of Indian citizens less important than the Central Vista project?
Topmost architects in many of those panels were never been able to tell me once why Central Vista project should not be there.
You're taking away money from the middle class. You're not giving money to the poor people, and you're spreading it, spending it on your Central Vista.
We would like to know what's the thinking behind this ridiculously small timeline.
Economic crisis, an environmental crisis, ecological crisis. I mean, what is the need?
You would actually be removing important layers of history.
The Central Vista Redevelopment Project, like with most of our national events of late, has again polarized the nation into believers and non-believers, which the bhakts versus the liberals. While on one side we have the bhakts' jingoistic chants of Atmanirbhar Bharat and Shining India.
संकल्प आत्मनिर्भर बनने का.
On the other side we have the liberals, who are claiming it to be nothing but a vanity exercise and a wasteful expenditure. Unfortunately, all of this is happening right in the middle of India's worst humanitarian crisis in a century. While people are grappling with the pandemic, objectivity, reason, is replaced with nationalistic sentiments, political sidelining, and personal grief. Depending on which side of the fence you're on, our conversations and opinions of the subject too have become sentiment and perception-driven, rather than reason-driven. Keeping our individual perceptions aside for just a few minutes, let's objectively understand the cogent arguments of the government, alongside that of various historians, environmentalists, and common citizens. Whether you believe the Central Vista is a nation-building initiative or a wasteful expenditure, it will remain a matter of personal perspective, and it will not change the fact that the project is nevertheless going ahead. However, after watching this video, we will hopefully better understand the arguments of people holding different perspectives and respectfully agree to disagree, keeping the spirit of unity alive, just as it should be in a democracy. Before we get into the details, let's do a quick review of what exactly is the Central Vista. The Central Vista, known as the nation's power corridor, is a 3-kilometer patch that stretches from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to the India Gate. It houses the Parliament and various buildings housing government ministries. In 2020, the government commissioned the Central Vista Redevelopment Project, which involves construction of a new Parliament, a new Central Secretariat, and new residences for the Prime Minister and the Vice President. As part of this redevelopment, many old buildings will be demolished and some revamped, all at a cost of 20,000 crore rupees or $2.7 billion. The primary feature of the Central Vista is a new Parliament building, which is spread over 64,000 square meters and will cost 971 crore to build. The new parliamentary building, along with the PM residence, is expected to be completed by August 22, in time for the celebration of India's 75th Independence Day. And the entire project is estimated to be completed by 2024, in time for the biggest dance of democracy, the general elections. In this part, let's understand the government's rationale to undertake this bid. These are the 3 key government arguments in favor of the project. Top of the list is the fact that over 70,000 central government employees, currently spread in multiple buildings across Delhi, will now be housed in a common secretariat. This is expected to save 1,000 crore rupees annually in rent. In addition, it is expected to increase administrative efficiency and productivity through improved access and interministerial collaboration. Second, the new Parliament building will have a larger seating capacity for our MPs. After the delimitation exercise in 2026, the number of MPs in the Lok Sabha could increase from the current 543 to over 850, which the current Parliament building just cannot accommodate. The Lok Sabha chamber in the new Parliament will now have a larger seating capacity of 888 MPs, while the Rajya Sabha chamber will accommodate 384 MPs. The Central Hall, which along with the Lok Sabha chamber and the Rajya Sabha chamber forms the core of the new parliament building, will accommodate members of both houses during a joint parliamentary session. Lastly, the new parliament building will be equipped with the latest digital interfaces and will facilitate paperless offices and also help in making the administration even more efficient. In comparison, the existing parliament building, which is now 93 years old, may not be earthquake-proof and its facilities and amenities are highly inadequate for efficient functioning. As a result, the existing Parliament House will be retrofitted and continue to be used for ad hoc parliamentary events. Now, while these are just the tangible aspects of the project, there's also an aspirational element to it. Through the Central Vista, the government aims to proudly portray the forward-looking aspirations of India and make it a symbol of national pride. Now, we'd be naive to imagine a project of such scale will have no critics. On this project too, there were alternative viewpoints and concerns raised by historians, environmentalists, and local citizens. In this section, we've collated all these viewpoints into 3 key concern areas we shall deep dive into independently. Concern number 1, and it is the most angering grievance of all, and it's about the lack of public consultation and planning. Typically, such iconic projects invite citizen inputs, have an open design competition, get the submissions evaluated by an independent jury of professional experts in what is at least a year-long process. Here, designs are invited from 6 handpicked firms, and one design was selected by a jury that had no public representative. No bidder clearly knows how marks were allotted to them. Now, all of this was completed in a record time of 45 days. In a case of curious coincidence, a Gujarat-based firm, HCP Design Planning and Management Private Limited, won the bid for providing consultancy services. Now, the name sounds familiar, then yes, it is. This is the same company that was the contractor for the Sabarmati Riverfront Development Project, the State Secretariat in Gandhinagar, and the chief architects of BJP's new headquarters. Not just that, there were other areas where procedures were bypassed. The overall project was broken down into multiple micro-projects, which is generally referred to as salami slicing. Ideally, every part of this project should have been submitted for approval to a standard list of required committees and agencies, such as the Central Vista Committee or the CVC, the Heritage Conservation Committee or the HCC, and the Delhi Urban Art Commission or the DUAC. By submitting it in multiple moving parts, tracking became difficult and approvals were easily obtained. By breaking up the project into smaller pieces, the government could apply for environmental clearance through a lower standard process that does not require public hearing or a full environmental impact assessment. 100 acres of land was transferred from public semi-public use to government office without the approval of HCC as is statutorily required in a Grade 1 heritage precinct. The decision to pass the change in land use was taken with 2 days' notice, with an independent member being absent. As a result, public land in Central Vista is now down from 115 acres to only 15 acres. The decision to pass the design of the new parliament was taken on 30th April 2020, in the middle of the national lockdown, when only government engineers and architects were present. Some members, including senior citizens, requested for the postponement after the lockdown. But this was again brushed aside as the project was classified as that of national interest and could not wait any longer. The head of the Specialist Committee to maintain architectural control and aesthetics over the Central Vista at the time this project was passed was only a road engineer from CPWD. Now you may wonder, what were the independent local bodies and agencies doing? And why did they not put their foot down and follow the due procedures? Based on the premise that power resides with the people, the 74th Amendment empowers local bodies to act independently of their respective state ministries. Hence, any development must have their approval. However, no submission was made to the North Delhi Municipal Corporation or the NDMC, most likely since it had members of the opposition who could raise objections. Therefore, no one has checked for bylaw compliance. In its place, a government agency, the Central Public Works Department of the CPWD, which is not an elected local body, was given the power of fund and allowed to pass this project. The DUAC chairperson, who is supposed to assess the worthiness of the project, was appointed the chairperson of the Tender Evaluation Committee of the Central Vista project. After having chosen the firm, he put on his hat as the DUAC chairperson and passed it. In effect, he sanctioned the project that he has submitted to himself. The government's intolerance towards any public scrutiny of the project is such that even photography of the construction is now officially banned. Since all of this is being done in such a hushed and clandestine manner, there is no knowledgeable inputs from conservationists, traffic planners, historians, or the citizens of Delhi. The concerned citizen groups are even drawing parallels with demonetization, CAA, NPR, and the NRC, which too were carried out without planning or parliamentary and public debate, the consequences of which are felt until today. Let's move on to concern number 2, relevance of the project. Central Public Works Department has cited seismic threats or earthquake hazards to the north and south blocks to support the redevelopment. This raises a pertinent question. Why is there then no such threat to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, Sansad Bhavan, or the India Gate, which are in the same precinct? Why are they not being rebuilt? A question is raised, why could the existing facilities not be reused with cost-effective modifications? But there appears to be no formal report in public domain of any such commission study which has evaluated this aspect. The project is cited as a landmark opportunity to build People's Parliament for the first time after independence, one which will match the needs and aspirations of a new India. So how is it then that parliaments in the United States and United Kingdom, which are hundreds of years old, can yet match the aspirations of a prosperous and developed nation? One of the opposition's claims is that the new parliament, which is designed by an Indian architect, will further BJP's anti-colonial Hindu-Hindustan agenda and move further away from Nehru's idea of secular India. To stamp BJP's signature in India's history, the Prime Minister, despite being the head of executive and not of legislature, breached constitutional propriety by laying the foundation stone when the correct protocol should have been for the President of India to lay the foundation stone. The supporting phrases used by the NDLIs for this project are Pride of India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, which are countered by chains of quixotic expenditure and vanity exercise. While the government sentiments echo nationalistic pride, the liberal sentiment seems to echo feelings of misplaced priorities. Speaking of misplaced priorities, let's now address the biggest elephant in the room: the amount being spent and why could it not be used for social benefits? There is of course no denial that a better facility for our MPs is required. But the opposition and many citizens have labelled this as a misplaced priority, given the state of our economy, education, and healthcare in India, making the government seem almost stone deaf. So let's put this spend into perspective and see why is this such a flashpoint. In the new Parliament building, the MPs will have private chambers to work out of. On the other hand, 6.5 lakh schools in India do not have a separate room for their principals or headmasters, and 83,000 schools don't even have a functional toilet. Several tech installations in the old Parliament are considered outdated, for example the microphone system. Our MPs surely deserve much more modern facilities. However, when 65% of our schools do not have a computer and 78% don't have any internet access, an outdated mic system doesn't seem all that bad. A modern library is one of the salient features of the new Parliament building. When 31% of our schools don't have any books in the library and 57% schools don't even have a newspaper, a modern library for MPs does pinch the poor middle-class Indian parent. The PM gets a new residential complex, even though the old continues to serve its purpose and has all the necessary security installations. The government claims that having a PM residence closer to the Parliament will reduce traffic congestion from VIP movement. However, when there are not enough hospital beds or oxygen cylinders for our sick, a new house for the PM only to avoid traffic congestion does blow a horn in some years. The centre owes 30,000 crore rupees to states as GST compensation, which is putting a severe strain on state finances and restricting their spending, especially during the COVID pandemic. So when the Chief Ministers cried foul on the project, it was palpable. Now maybe it's a small thing and only a play of numbers for the government, but the parents who see their children being denied basic amenities see this very differently. The one who lost his dear one due to lack of healthcare facilities is not as accommodating in appreciating the spend. And therein lies their anger, and they ask the government to show their solidarity and to share their state of inconvenience, to make them believe that they are not alone in bearing these hardships. Let's now move on to the last of the three key concerns: timing of the project. At the outset, it seemed like a case of Nero fiddling while Rome burns. The stone laying ceremony was held at a time when thousands of farmers were protesting the three farm laws for months and the country was fighting a raging pandemic. The timing of such an exercise surely made for bad optics and played a big role in fueling public anger even further. Most of the buildings to be torn down and rebuilt under the project would be turning 100 in a few years, and then would come under the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act. Another consideration that explains the way the project was seemingly rushed through. Talking of timing, the rush to complete the project by 2024 seems eerily timed to present it gift wrapped with a ribbon before the next general elections. The critics are drawing parallels to such monuments being used as a propagandist tool around the world. For example, the Chinese managed to use the 2008 Olympic Stadium to divert attention from the criminal human rights record. The government in Baku, Azerbaijan, had a famous architect design a showpiece museum to give a good face to their fascist regime. After the infamous statues and memorials and bhavans coming up across India, they question if the Central Vista will be the next showpiece to distract attention from the declining economy and the state of education and healthcare. So, that made up the top three concerns voiced against the project. Since the government did not pay much heed to these voices as a last resort, the concerned citizen groups filed multiple petitions in the Supreme Court asking it to intervene and stop this project. The majority judgment based its opinion on the principle of judicial restraint and accepted the government's arguments that it must stay out of policy decisions. The minority judgment, however, found lack of application of mind and failure of due process. It gave a 16-point recommendation for the government to follow. Agreeing to the Central Vista project as one of national importance, the court even allowed the work at the site to continue, even during the lockdown, thereby diluting the public trust doctrine. Before we move on to a final section, I have a small request to make. If you appreciate our attempt in bringing you this video, please do take a moment to like it and share it with your friends. We also encourage you to join a family by subscribing to our channel on YouTube. If you click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button, you will get instantly notified each time a new video is uploaded. Okay, you've heard three key viewpoints for and against this project, and also the standpoint of the judiciary. So what is the correct or the most valid standpoint? Now, whether this is a right, wrong, good, bad, justified, unjustified spend is not for me to certify. You now have fairly sufficient inputs now to form your own opinions. So as a final take, I'll just say this. The 3-kilometer Central Vista is not just any other landmark. It cuts through the very heart of Delhi. It is a place used by the citizens to express their joys through celebrations and their anger through protests. It binds many memories of our ancient past and connects the younger generation to India's rich history. Speaking of history, I'm reminded of an observation made by William Dalrymple in his travelogue, The City of Jinns. He mentions, whoever has built a new city in Delhi has always lost it. The Pandavas, Prithviraj Chauhan, Firoz Shah Tughlaq or Shah Jahan. They all built new cities and they all lost them. But history, as they say, often repeats itself. Will these words by William Dalrymple turn into a prophecy? Or will the current government lose their Raj and the Rajdhani? Or will the Central Vista truly become the symbol of a forward-looking India? Just as with everything else, only time will tell. For accessing many more such videos and data-driven analysis on the Indian society, log on to themirrority.com. In the hope that through this video, we at the Mirrority have brought a little bit more objectivity to the subject and got some of your thinking, I, Jitesh Surjani, sign off.